Welcome to the Melodology Podcast, celebrating the unsung excellence of melody makers. My name is Arthur Brewer. I am the host of the Melodology Podcast, and in this episode, we have not our usual one guest, but two guests, because we are welcoming the team of melody makers who created the music for the Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode, Subspace Rhapsody. That is Kay Hanley and Tom Polce. Kay is an American singer and songwriter best known as the vocalist for the alternative rock band Letters to Cleo. Among many other credits, she's also co-executive director of Songwriters of North America, or SONA, an LA-based nonprofit which advocates for fair pay and other rights for songwriters. Tom Polce is a Los Angeles-based composer and multi-instrumentalist from Boston who studied at the acclaimed New England Conservatory of Music and Berklee College of Music. Welcome to the Melodology Podcast, Kay and Tom.
Hi.
Thank you, Arthur.
Oh, it's really nice to have you on here. I have to say, Star Trek and music are two of my favorite things. And for the two of them to be combined into a single episode on a television show was a fantastic experience for me. And I immediately, at the end of the show, was wanting to watch the credits and see who were the songwriters. And of course, Paramount Plus kept switching to the next episode of some other show. And so I went online, I found your names, and then I went looking for interviews because I figured somebody had to be asking you about this fantastic experience that you had and about the challenges of creating music for something like this. So it looks like this is the first interview that anybody has made with you about this.
This is the first time we're talking about it. Yeah.
True.
Well, that's great for me, and I'm excited to have you both. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for agreeing. And first question, what was the experience of getting this job like, of finding out that you were working to become the songwriters for this show?
Okay, I'll start. The conversation began with a pandemic Zoom meeting as we were all going through at the time. I didn't know what the conversation was about. I knew that there was some sort of music thing that they wanted to do. So I hop on the call and they quickly say, we're thinking about doing a musical. And I think there was an awkward silence, and then my head exploded in my head about, well, what's a sci-fi musical and what would that be? And we discussed, what it could be, what we definitely don't want it to be. And one of the big things was we didn't want to do a musical just for the sake of a musical. We wanted to make sure the songs drove whatever the plot was going to be, or whatever we needed it to drive something and not just be songs. Ultimately, it's out now. The songs are really character expositions in a lot of ways, right, Kay? I mean, it's really like the insides, right? I think a lot of the things that were communicated lyrically are things that might have been just way too over the top to communicate via dialogue, which is kind of the beauty of what a musical can do. So that was sort of how this all began when we sort of had our head around what the songs were going to be and how many they were going to be. I knew I needed a partner in this thing, and I called Kay up, Toot Sweet, and said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this." I'm pretty sure her head exploded as well with a, what does that even mean? And Kay, I'll take it from there. What were your thoughts?
So, well, just to back up a little bit, the reason that Tom was on that Zoom call was because he's a staff writer for the Paramount, CBS Paramount. And so it wasn't like they just like, he's in the room where it happens all the time. So like you do score for shows on CBS, you do theme songs, you do music stuff.
I do music
You're
stuff.
You're like Boy Friday music dude.
Yeah, I'm their composer if they need stuff.
So my experience was like, actually, the first time you called me about this, Tom, you were thinking that you weren't going to have time. So you called me about bringing my team in to do like a song or two. So I was like, oh my God, this would be incredible. And I was just thinking about like because I do music for animation, and Tom and I have been bandmates since we were kids, so we've worked together on a million different things. So at some point, Tom, you decided, you know what? I am going to have time for this. And you decided to throw your hat in the ring to do all the music for this episode. So at that point, you called and asked if I would be interested in being your lyricist. And I was like, and then it turned out we ended up writing all the songs together, and it was dreamy. Luckily for us, we already had this kind of shorthand together,
Yeah.
from being in our 20s in a band together. Like, we wrote a whole Letters to Cleo record together, and I've sung on a bunch of stuff for Tom, and
We've been playing together ever since.
yeah, with like our whole entire lives, we've been playing in bands and music projects together. So for us to get together and do this, a lot of that sort of like get to know you stuff was already like there was already such a trust level,
For sure.
which was necessary because when you're writing songs for characters like this, which are, they're so canon. And like you can't dial it in. You have to go deep.
For
And
sure.
Tom and I had to like really invest ourselves in what these characters were going through and really talk about stuff as like talk about our own experiences with these feelings and situations as we were writing the songs. And I think that put us at such an incredible advantage, just that we were able to do that so naturally together.
For sure. And also, let's not forget the Yoda level guidance we got
Oh, yeah.
from the episode writers as well
Hmm.
as the showrunners.
Yeah.
They provided us with the deeper canon stuff just
Hmm.
so that we don't blow it, right?
Right.
There's just so much history there, and there's just so much to know, and they really uh, help just sort of like guide us along the path if we either didn't know or maybe we were omitting something that was important in these sort of backstories. They helped us. And one
Yeah.
other thing I should mention, Kay wasn't just a lyricist. We wrote these songs together. I
Yeah.
mean,
I was
I
going to
think
ask
I
that.
think yeah, when we started this, the thing that came to mind was like, I'm gonna need help with lyrics. And then it really came to mind when I realized that several of the songs were deep perspectives from the female characters.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't need me writing those lyrics. So I knew I was gonna need some authenticity there, but
Yeah.
the reality is that we got together and we banged out songs and we were all participating. So that it wasn't that she was, I mean, the melodies and chords and all the things, it really was this sort of thing that came together. And as it is, you never really know how things are going to go. You just want to go and follow the water in its smoothest way. And the smoothest way was not thinking about it and just making music
Yeah.
and drinking an awful lot of LaCroix.
LaCroix. Drinking LaCroix alcoholically.
Yeah. And also, let's be real. I mean, the timeline was bonkers. We had to
It
we had to
was
write and produce the songs
in
I forget.
5 weeks. And
Yeah.
Wow.
in my life, what had just happened was so we're coming out of the pandemic. Like, there's all this stuff going on. My husband's about to
Yes.
go on tour. Like, I'm not feeling tip top. Like, a lot of us were feeling a little bit like disoriented from the pandemic and like, what just happened? And,
Mm.
and then my condo flooded, like flooded. While my husband was on tour, I have to just unceremoniously move out of my house with my dog and my cat by myself. I moved up to this like really sort of secluded house up in the Hollywood Hills that like I'm not going to lie, it was a dark time. But it was like really like fertile ground for getting in there and just like
Emotions for
pulling some
sure.
out. But Tom would come over to what we called the treehouse, and we would sit with my dog, and it just happened to like during the day, it just, I mean, day and night. At night it was like really creepy and lonely, but like during the day it had this like vista view of like the San Fernando Valley and the you know the mountains, and it
The
was just
birds
as,
chirping.
and the birds so like when you listen to our voice memo or like our work tapes, you can hear like the birds chirping and like
Mm.
the rustling of the wind, and you know it was so perfectly timed that like it was almost divine. Like there's no
Mm.
other way to explain like the headspace we were able to get into in the treehouse. It was
For sure.
crazy.
My question is, you had 5 weeks to write all of the songs for the episode. It's an
Hmm.
hour-long episode, but you also had to work with essentially 10 main singers,
Hmm.
each of whom has different vocal range, different vocal abilities,
Yeah.
different how much do they want to be singing and so forth on stage. How is that process of meeting them or working with them and talking to them about their abilities?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. Once we decided what we were doing and we had a plan, the very first thing I needed to do was head out to where they shoot, which is in Toronto. And they set up a day or a day and a half of, I was in, this is still COVID times, and they gave me a trailer and I had a piano and a guitar, and they just sort of schlepped each one. I think I had a half hour with each of them, and it was really to get a sense of their skill level, their how excited they were to sing, and of course their range, right? Because if you're writing songs for these folks, you want to write it in, you want to write something they can sing and in a good key for them. And sometimes that works. Usually it's very close. I will say there wasn't a single song we needed to change keys in. So I was very proud
Nope.
of both of us, because
Yes.
one of the things I did was after we recorded, I showed Kay. I played back. I recorded my meetings with each of them just so that we can get our heads like, okay, this is what that instrument sounds like, and then we just sort of took it from them. So we went through all of the singers. What I'll say about the cast is, oh my gosh, they were all very excited. They were all interested. Some came to the table with theater experience,
Hmm.
vocal experience. Some did not. Whether they did or did not come to the table with a huge skill set, they were all very, very excited to sing. So it was the vibe was right. Kay mentions the vibe for the writing, which was just sort of magical, and the vibe of the cast, which I also think kind of comes through in the episode. Like
Hmm.
there was no, you can sense that nobody was like, oh man, I can't believe I can do this. Everybody was just into it. So and that just ends up happening throughout the whole production crew. Everybody was just into it and excited. So assessed the vocals, assessed the range, came back, spoke with the episode writers and with the showrunners. I said, "Hey, here are the ranges, and here is the interest, and here is the skill levels, and here is all the sort of stuff to sort of keep in mind." And then they came back to us with a general overview of what this script's going to be. And at which
Hmm.
point we all started having our weekly Zooms. It's like every week we would have a Zoom, right? And we would show progress and discuss what the song should be about,
Yeah.
things like that.
And I remember the first couple of songs we delivered were sort of like these, had like a lot of action, like Status Report and Lawn Song. How would that feel? And so those early songs were like barn burners or like big torch songs. And then I
Yeah.
remember bringing Chapel's song, that I'm Ready,
Yes.
and she's a singer that like is a singer like I am, like not a huge range, but like has a style.
Mm.
And so we didn't do like big notes for her. We wrote a song that fit her range, but
Yeah.
also like her character.
Yeah.
It's very sassy.
Yeah, it's like
Sappy.
it's more like dun, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum,
I
like
think when we were talking about it, I had mentioned something like I want it to be like one of those, like I could bring home the bacon from
yes,
and
yes,
fry it
yeah,
up in the pan. It was like one of those little sassy kind of things.
yeah. But I remember when we brought it to them, because it wasn't that over the top thing, and it was just like a demo that was just kind of, this news really changes everything. And it was
Yeah.
kind of, it seemed way more chill. And I think they were like, oh, we want the big burners. But then it ended up being like so,
It's a
I mean,
jazzy,
it works
swingy number.
so good.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so good for her.
For me, that one turned into like this sort of like late 60s Vegas and
Yeah.
Margaret sort of jazz,
Yeah.
sexy thing. So yeah, I was really happy
Yeah.
with the way that one came.
And it never would have happened that way if Tom hadn't gotten her range, because
Right.
we knew
Yeah.
exactly what she could do. We were able to tailor this song
Yeah.
to showcase
We're
her
yeah,
strengths.
her thing. You just wanna shine
Yeah.
a light on, the thing that makes them, really.
Yeah.
There was one other thing I wanted to mention though, that was sort of serendipity. Uh, During all of this, Grease had come on the television, and I'm not gonna lie, every time that thing comes on, I watch it. Um, and, I was like, I was watching it, and then, of course, Grease Lightning comes on, I'm seeing these dance numbers, and, one of the things that, the writers and the showrunners told both Kay and I was like, "We want," and I'm sure it happens this way for most, when they watch it, is like, "We want these songs to be emotional, we want people to cry." So that's why there's so many emotional songs. But what I was missing was like, man, why can't we have a dance moment in this thing? And then when I realized that the chapel thing was in a bar, I was like, uh-uh. And I just,
Yeah.
I pitched it after they approved the song. I was like, how about we do like, 16 bars of like a whole dance situation? And of course, and this is something that happened throughout. Anytime we had one of these moments where we thought of an idea that maybe wasn't what we had considered, everybody was completely open and like, yeah, let's go do that.
Yep.
And that continues on up until when Kay decided we were going to do a K-pop thing for the Klingon thing, but we can get there when we get there. But it came with equal excitement, like, yeah, we're not afraid. Let's just go do it.
Yeah.
So that's what we did, and that's why we had that dance moment in that bar scene. I'm so happy because it breaks up the songs because there's a lot of power ballads in there and there's a lot of emotional things, which was uh, part of our concept. But it was nice to have that sort of moment of we're doing a little jazz dancing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you suddenly notice there are all these crew members you've never seen before who can really dance.
Yes, yeah, go figure. Go figure.
All right. Well, let's take a break and we will come back and continue talking with Kay Hanley and Tom Polce. Thank you. Welcome back to the Melodology Podcast. I am here today with Kay Hanley and Tom Polce. Thank you again for joining me on the podcast. I wanted to talk about the craft and the skills in songwriting. And the songs in this episode, I noticed while I was watching it, and I've listened to it again and again, there is a lot of craft both in the melody writing and in the lyric writing. Tell us about the process of creating the melodies that you created that actually, in a lot of ways, carry over throughout the episode.
I'll field this one. So the process was pretty simple and straightforward, and it was one of those really rare creative situations where like it kind of took on a creative life of its own with us. Like I don't remember ever struggling,
No,
to be like it
everything
just.
flowed.
So what the process was, Tom would come over to the treehouse at like 10 in the morning, and we would sit down on this couch that like overlooked the aforementioned valley and mountains
Yeah.
and trees and birds, and he had sort of a portable recording rig with him. And what's your DAW?
It was a little Pro Tools rig, with a mic.
And so Tom generally would come in with, I'd have read the pages for the song that we were going to write, so I would know the scene and kind of what was happening around it. Tom would almost invariably come in with a melody, like just like a very basic melody and chord progression for a verse, you know? And then it was always amazing. And like I would always come up with like a lyric for it, like instantly. And like once you have that with a song, once you have like a lyric for like a lyric and a melody, even just that seed of an idea, you are, I don't want to say you're golden. I mean, your work has just begun in a sense.
But the snowball begins to roll at that point.
Right. You have materials to start working with.
Absolutely. And one thing I'll mention is that just from a songwriting, having a gig where you have to write a song rather than having a song come to you, which as artists, we wait for them to come to us if we're writing our albums. And, you try not to force that. But for these sorts of gigs, it's like, no, 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 you actually have to go ahead and write the song if it's not happening or not. So what I wanted to mention was one thing that I'll mention to other composers is that if you're going in to collaborate with somebody, showing up with some sort of ammo. It could be the
Mhm.
littlest thing, which, like Kay says, what it was, it would be, here's
The
a little seed.
littlest thing can
There you
mean
go.
everything
There it is. Boom.
when being authentically
Exactly.
you.
That's all you need, right? So
Right?
just otherwise, you just sit there staring at each other. And sometimes, the little seed doesn't work, but that will at least start a discussion of, well, okay, why doesn't that work? Maybe it should be a little more this, and then you've got the seed right after that. So showing up with something, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember showing up. We were at the end, and we were supposed to write Uhura song.
Oh my God.
Uh, and I remember showing up, and before I picked up a guitar to sort of show her what I was like, here's something I'm thinking of, she immediately was just like, wait, I want to start this with the Gregorian chant. And she immediately just started going, no words. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay. I don't even know what that meant yet. And like that, but that was the seed, right? Then that sort of blossomed the whole thing.
Oh, and then you had that like
Oh,
amazing,
the guitar,
like
yeah, and then the guitar melody.
arpeggiated
Yeah, the guitar,
harmonic
the
bit.
guitar
Oh,
thing.
such a
Yeah.
hook.
And then that's just how it sort of all went. It's
Yeah.
that, she's got the seed, I have a seed, just whatever it is, just showing up with something is a really important, thing when you're going to collaborate with somebody.
Yeah, and for that song, that Gregorian chant moment works really nicely because she has sort of a recitative. She has this little spot where she has to tell some story, a little backstory,
Yeah.
Mhm.
before it gets
Mm.
into the aria, the
Yeah.
torch song sort of moment
Yeah.
that she has after that. So she's got to start it out. So that really was a clever use and your experience of knowing about how Gregorian chant will work and so forth fed into the rest of the song, but was also functional.
Yeah. It almost sounds like we knew what we were doing.
Well, I mean, the reason that I mean the song with Uhura, that was also kind of like that moment for us in writing this thing. Like we knew that this song was coming, and we knew that this was going to be the big sort of ballad. And Uhura, the Celia who plays Uhura, is a theater singer, so she can really sing.
Grammy
And
winner.
this, yep,
Totally. I mean, she
this
had the range.
she's the
Yeah.
real deal. So this moment we knew was coming, and there was sort of like coming in. We had gotten a little bit more information about her. Like we had the
Yeah.
information about her family. We had a little
And
bit more
Hammer.
information about Hemmer
Yeah.
and how, and Spock has just left her to deal with this situation to fix it by herself. And so when and she's in her communications, which felt very kind of
Churchy.
like churchy.
Yeah.
And so it made a lot of sense for her to like start on this journey of going from like, oh, I'm all alone to like, yes, I'm all alone, and I will
That's
do this,
right.
and we had to kind of take it there, and having it grounded in sort of like faith was like felt really like of course, it just felt like very, we didn't struggle with that idea. It was like it really just kind
Yeah.
of, and then coming back to it, and I've never ever in my life cried while writing lyrics for a song until that song, and I still cry when I hear it. Like it's so deeply, I just, oh my gosh, it just, ugh.
The song is a story about her coming into herself, because this whole
Mhm.
arc of her story has been about her kind of coming out of her shell and discovering who she is and letting her hair down, so to speak, becoming more relaxed and not so tense about everything, but then taking herself the next step. And that, that works really well in that moment. And you have a singer who has an amazing range and amazing vocal talent. You give her a ninth to leap, by the way,
Yes, I knew
which
she could do that. And, look,
Aw.
we start off, we start off in the lower register. First chorus is an octave low, second chorus
This
goes up
was
the
like,
octave. Fourth chorus is, that octave up a full step, which she hits in, full voice. And we wanted to do that because we knew she could do it. I mean, it's similar to the Lawn song, another amazing singer. And one thing that to mention, the turn in the lyric of "Keep Us Connected," there's a turn in Lawn's song, right? Where, she, towards the end, she's just like, who am I kidding? I would like to, um, but this is who I am. It would be nice. And then also with Una's song, she
ugh,
also, starts off with, I knew how to keep. It's good to keep a secret, man. It's good to know it. And then she's like, maybe I wish I wasn't so good. So a lot of these have these sort of turns. Even in the Spock song, it's got that turn, but that one's more of a turn of phrase.
yeah.
The X, the X, but also even I go solo, or initially it's for me sometimes it feels like so LOW, and at the end it's like I'm solo and I own this. There's just so many really lovely things there and these interesting turns, and a lot of these turns were sure, we came up with the turn, but they would be spawned on by the writers when we'd have these zooms. It's
Yeah.
like, what if, like, by the end, this is really what's happening?
Yeah. And the writers were so collaborative and
Oh my
like
gosh.
we would turn in. So I know you want to ask about On the X and I want to talk about On the X, but I do want to say one more thing about process. So Tom would come that first day and we would like sketch out the, the basic arrangement. And we would have like a lot of the lyrics done, but then Tom would leave and start building the track, and then I would obsess about lyrics. And I could not have conversations with people. I couldn't do anything except for like live in like trying to just like solve the puzzles of these songs.
it's what I refer to as your muse writing you. Because your muse is just sitting there
Sure,
like, no,
yeah.
you can't do this, and takes your head and turns it in a different direction. Says, no, I don't want you paying attention to anything except this stuff right now.
I couldn't. And then Tom would come back the next time and he would have all like a track kind of like built up. I would have the lyric done, at least the first draft of the lyric done. We would record it and then we would start the next song. And then we
Yeah.
would just get
Yeah.
leapfrog like that for
And
5
it would still
weeks
be
is what we did.
editorial. Like she'd be like, maybe we don't need that section there. And, we would also discuss the
Yeah.
lyric and sort of like do our next pass, right? But
Yeah.
then we would move on to the next one. Yeah.
And the writers, we would bring these first drafts to the writers and they would kind of live with them. And so we were constantly like, everyone was in process with these in a way that like a lot of times when you write for television, you're dealing with executives and writers. You're the songwriter writing to picture, you're dealing with people who don't speak songwriter. And so it can be a frustrating,
Yeah.
you know, tug of war to like wrangle songs into shape. And for whatever reason, like we would deliver these, the songs to the writers and the showrunners, and they would just like get it and they would know exactly how to point us in the right direction
Yeah.
in a way that we understood and we could
Yes.
like, I remember with the chapel song, the if I need to leave you, I don't fight it. We didn't have that turn in there
Yeah.
at first.
That's right. That's another turn.
We thought
Yeah.
about it. We thought about that, but then we were like, "Oh, that's too harsh.
It's
She
too
wouldn't
mean.
do,
It's too
you know,
mean. Of
it's too
course.
mean." So we kind
Well,
of
we
took
went
it
mean
out and
anyway.
put something softer in there. And then they were like, "Can't you do it?" And we were like, "Yes, we can."
Yes,
And we
we
went back
can.
to
Because we had already, yeah, we were already going to do that,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, shout out. Bill Wolkoff, Dana Horgan,
Yep.
Henry Alonso Myers, Akiva,
Akiva.
Akiva
Yep.
Goldsman. So shout out to them. It was obviously none of this could have been done without them. They shepherded us and it was really a nice symbiosis. I know that as the songs came in, I'm sure that was provided some fertility and some nourishment to help them sort of fine line the plot in the storyline. So we're all working with each other. Which is another different thing from Kay's world and my world, because a lot of times, at least for me, I'm coming in to provide music to a locked cut, right? And they've already cut the video to a piece of temp music. So I'm locked into tempo or a metric modulation of a tempo so that I'm hitting things because they're cutting to them. So in a lot of ways, hands are tied in that way. In this case, though, heck no, everything was working together, and we didn't come in after the script. The script, came in, the songs happened, things got modified so that they're all working with each other. It was really a lovely, an unusual experience from my side. So, doing it as a musical was just killer.
Some of the writing is really impressive in things like I'm the X. And to write a song about Spock, who in this series is exploring himself as a human, trying to find the human parts of himself, and he's loosened up with some very comic results in some other episodes. But in this episode, we do have that turn where Nurse Chapel, because the music that everybody's singing is a plot point in the story, the music is making them say things that they may not really want to say. So this song makes her say that. It's good that that turn is in there because it then affects him. A craft point that I want to point out is you have the same song sung different ways in I'm Ready and I'm the X.
Yeah, they are coin flips of one another, and so that was obviously by design. We both discussed it, and it was like, yeah, for sure. Just do I guess we did. What did we do? We did that British synth, 80s synth pop version
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah,
super
totally.
depressing.
Yeah.
I do remember. The this was yeah, I think this was like the one song where, not only were we texting iterations back to each other and emailing iterations of the song and the lyrics like back and forth, but like at one point we were just texting each other. We were so into like, how are we going to get Spock to communicate all this great information? Because, one thing a lot of folks mentioned that I don't even really think I acknowledged, maybe Kay did, was that in some ways, perhaps that was the moment that Spock became the Spock that we all grew up with, which was very stoic. Maybe he let it happen. In a previous episode, he had an engagement, and there was some levity and there was some emotion. So maybe this was the moment where it was like, you know what,
I
I'm
ain't
not
doing
doing that
that.
anymore. So
Yeah.
that was like, we were
I
so
won't make
into
that
it. Like
mistake
I was
again.
hitting her back with lyrics, she's hitting me back. No, it should be. We're like into it. It
We
was
did
so great.
fight about the
It was,
song,
but it was love
especially
fights. It was just
well, it was
wonderful.
love fights.
Yeah.
I have to say, one of the proudest moments of my personal life as a lyricist
Mm.
was having this idea to combine like a math equation and make it a simile for like
A relationship.
a relationship or
Yeah.
like a breakup or a broken
Yeah.
heart.
Searching
And
for why I'm the X.
I'm the ex, yeah. And so after that, it was like how to. So Tom ended up having like a lot of ideas about how to really bring in his language and to like make it like really over the top of like,
Yeah.
or I'll drown in this sea of pain. Like that is how like
Yeah.
human Spock, who's just like
Yes.
so like he's not capable of kind of nuance. It's like it's
Yeah.
either like it's black or white. And so Tom was able to like take that concept and really like dig into like bringing out even more over the top emotion from him that still felt authentic. And I feel like the responsibility to write a song for Spock more than any other character, at least for me, was like the pressure felt enormous because you cannot
No.
mess that up.
No, you
That
can't.
that in the Klingons,
Yeah,
So it's like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you cannot mess that up. And I remember talking to my nephew Brendan, who
Yes,
is
I
a
knew this
serious
was another
Trekkie.
text. This was
Yeah.
another text. Yeah.
And I think at first, because I did not start out this journey as a Trekkie. I watched the original Star Trek with my dad on Channel 38 in Boston when I was little. But so I know the world, but I'm not a Trekkie by any stretch. So I think my nephew, Brendan, was a little bit horrified that his Auntie KK was writing the music for. He was like, they're letting you what?
Yeah.
So, but he walked me through like a lot of the, like he walked us through, and he really did like explain like Spock and like how his, like his fidelity to reason and logic is the most defining thing
Paramount.
about him. And anyway, he told me lots of other things that I ended up bringing into the process. And but with Spock, oh my gosh, Tom, I think we both felt like that song was like the pressure to get it right was
For
like,
sure. And, I will say one of at least for me, one of my proudest moments for the both of us, we really wanted to craft this lyric to have the arc it had. When we finally landed on what's that line? I solved for Y in my calculation, but
yeah,
missed
miss
vital
vital
information.
information.
The
Their
variable
variable.
so
That was
devastating is
you.
just like
That was you.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Oh,
I don't know.
maybe. I don't know. I
Whatevs.
think I had variable in a different,
Yeah,
but you
maybe
had
it was
that
us. It was,
phrasing.
but this was,
Yeah.
to speak to your process. We would just go back and forth. Like I had goosebumps. Like I think I said, "I've got goosies." That's the one. That was it. Which is what I do in sessions too.
I have goosies. That's how we knew that we
That's how you know you
hit on
got
the
it.
right
So
thing.
like that was just one of those moments. Is like we did it, and then having Ethan just crush that thing.
Oh my
His
God. I
range.
did not see that coming.
His range, he's singing down to a low D.
Yes, he is. And when he came into the, going back to when I first met them to assess their singing and what they want to do, he was one of the few that came and was like, I don't sing. And I was like,
What?
okay. I was like, so
I don't
what? He was
remember
like, well, I
this.
played cello. I played cello and I absolutely love music. So one of the things I did with all of them was like, all right, bring up, Apple Music, Spotify, something, play me some stuff you like. Just sort of, that was another big thing, was getting in their heads of something they'd be comfortable singing, right? So a lot of the stuff he brought up was on the morose side, dark and mysterious. So I wanted that track to have that, of course, and that just is more serendipity. It worked. It was the right thing to do as the coin flip from Chapel's song, right? And I knew he could get down to that note, and I knew he had that deep, deep sound. So it was just fingers crossed. Even the opening line of Status Report, let's be real. I mean, he opens that thing with the intermittent. I mean, if it didn't have
So
that
good.
depth, I don't know that would bring you in. And boy, when he got those on, it was more goosies. Like when he started singing, I was like, it's gonna work. Because he said he didn't sing.
But not for nothing. Not for nothing, but Tom's demos, Tom sang all the demos for the male parts.
Yeah.
And Tom is the most amazing singer. And so it was like, so your demos for the dudes to sing to was like so inspiring.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
they were mimicking you. They did.
Yeah.
Oh, I do want to talk about the opening of Status Report and Spock specifically in that.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and take a break and we will come back on that topic. Welcome back to the Melodology Podcast, celebrating the unsung excellence of melody makers. I am here with two amazing melody makers and lyricists, Kay Hanley and Tom Polce. And we were just talking about the opening number in the Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode Subspace Rhapsody. The opening number is called Status Report, and it includes the entire cast singing from their stations around the Enterprise about what has just happened. There's this strange experience that just happened. And it starts out with Spock, of all people, being the first person who starts communicating and realizes as he's doing it that he's singing. So this is a musical episode trope a little bit, where the characters in some of the, some
Yeah.
like in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the characters know
Yeah.
they're singing.
Yeah.
And you did a very fantastic thing with his lyrics. You made his words Spock's words. The most confounding thing.
Yes.
Which, by the way, love the chord progression right there, because it's the
Thank
one
you.
spot where the chord progression does this little odd chord. The
Mhm.
most confounding thing, I appear to be singing.
Yeah.
Most unusual, so peculiar. So I want to point out the lyrics there. You are expressing a lot of craft in the lyrics there. Most unusual. You're doing the lyrics of a consonant into a vowel instead
Yeah.
of most peculiar. You don't have,
Yeah.
and then you have so peculiar. So you're moving from a vowel into a consonant. So
Yeah.
you know your stuff. You are making it singable, and people don't have to crunch out all these consonants on top of each other. You don't have folding vowels into each other. You are experienced with this, and you know what you're doing. And that was really brilliant. Not only getting the words to sound like something Spock would say in the first place, but then putting them in an order that works functionally for singers.
That sounds good, right? I mean, I think that's well, that was one of those songs where when they had told us what that thing needed to be, uh, it's a status report, y'all. And I was like, okay, so you're gonna need to give us, I think one of the words we used a lot was like, you need to give us some ammo, right? On the Uhura song, we needed backstory ammo, right? We need to know about Hemmer. We needed to know about her family. Um, we needed to know, about so many
The
things. So in this one,
language.
the language, in this one, it's the language,
Yeah,
like,
the
guys,
language. Yeah.
inertial
Like,
dampers, you're gonna, I mean, you need to
to
tell
see
us.
if they're hampered. I love
Yeah,
that line.
right. To see if they're so
That's like,
we would get these little emails of just like, okay, so Spock, these are the things he does. Number one, these are the things she does. And let's be real. They gave us some rhymes too. Like they gave us some rhymes. They gave us real ammo, right? For us to just sort of like, it was almost like, here's a grocery bag. Go make us a nice soup. So they gave us a grocery bag of ingredients, and then we just
Tom
came
just
up.
turned into his Italian grandma. right
Always,
there.
it's always cooking. It's always cooking at all times. So yeah, they would give us the ammo of like, here is the nomenclature. Here's what they do. And those things got moved around a bunch. At the end, like if I recall, it didn't end with Pike saying, "Why are we singing?" It didn't end that way. That wasn't on. At first, there was nothing at that very end. It was just big orchestral hits, and then we did it with the full cast, and then I saw they sent us a revision, and it just said Pike, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So another revision, and it turned into, which was just perfect. He was just, oh, I can talk forever about him. Anson was just so killer to work with and so lovely
So
and just so
funny.
funny. And like, oh yeah, I mean the episode, his reaction shots, the
Oh my
comedic
God.
timing of
He's
him,
so good.
mwah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
throughout
And
the series,
he was
his
another
comedic timing
guy.
is brilliant.
Yeah, his timing is amazing. And it was another one of those things like Ethan, where he's like, I'm not really a singer, but I'm ready to go and give it 5 zillion%, which is what he did. I mean, I think one of
Yeah.
my favorite vocal moments is from Anson when he's like, the Starship Enterprise feels electrified. I mean,
Electrified.
goosies. He
Yeah.
gave me goosies. It was just another one of those things where they all just brought.
I remember writing that part on when we
Yeah.
played that gig, the Blizzard gig. And so our band Letters to Cleo had like right at the end when we had to write the finale.
That was crazy.
We
Kay. That was all on
had
you
the
right there.
Blizzard. We had the Blizzard gig, and so we had a gig up at the top of the mountain in Colorado. It was
Colorado,
like an
yeah.
hour north of. It was crazy.
Oxygen
And
deprivation, the whole
Yep.
thing.
all of it. And I couldn't talk to anyone at all because the puzzle of writing figuring out the finale was like it literally I could have been certified.
She was on a
Certifiable
mission with
at
this
that.
one.
I was like, I will solve the puzzle. Anyway,
Yeah.
I
Oh, she
did.
solved it.
But the But that reminds me of that because I believe the Starship Enterprise feels electrified.
Electric.
I'm so proud to be a captain. I remember
Oh my
that
God,
coming.
so Anson, so Anson.
He
And yeah,
was
that
great.
was one, that was that was the tail end of our writing process. That was our last song. And that
Yeah.
was that was a bear because we didn't quite know what it was going to be. And then they were like, well,
Yeah.
we want everybody to just sort of like come to terms with what they're bringing
Yeah.
to the team and how that makes them feel. And I remember I was getting ready to go back to Toronto to record the vocals, and I was finishing up all of the all of the music. And Kay was pretty, I mean, I believe we had the chorus
Yeah.
and we had the ending,
We
but
had
the
more fights
actual
about this song.
verses of the individual people, it was like it was no more texting because like we were in mission critical. I
Yeah.
was finishing up the track. She had to just rock those lyrics. And I remember being at that gig, and we were just holed up in hotel rooms because we're waiting for the gig. We're up on top
Hmm.
of a mountain. We can't barely breathe with no oxygen. And she's just sitting there. We're texting. She's like, "You want to get together?" And I'm like, "Ugh." And she's like, "Okay." And then she just kept going, and she just kept going. And then by the time we left, she's like, "I think I did it. I think I got it done." I was like, "Yes." So, it was one more, back at the treehouse where we sing it through and do our final tweaks. And man, I'm happy with the way that one came out.
So
Yeah, that was a
I understand from another interview that I saw that there are actually two versions of the Klingon scene. There is the
yes.
Klingon opera, which has been a plot point or a canon point
Forever.
about Klingons, that there is Klingon opera. And so that was one version of it, but then
Correct.
there is the K-pop version, which I will say, my experience, because I saw it with 6 other people, and the experience that I've seen people, because you have a lot of reaction videos
A
up on
head
YouTube.
explosion. It should
You
be a
have
head
to
explosion.
watch the reaction videos if you have not, because the reaction videos are fantastic. As
Oh,
soon
that's
as the
great.
Klingon just gives up fighting it and starts singing, everybody is crying, laughing.
Yes.
And that was exactly our experience. We were just like, first of all, what just happened? Which is the cast
Exactly
reaction and the
right.
crew reaction as well. Like,
Yes.
what was that? But then also, we're just laughing so hard because it was so perfect a moment.
Visually compelling too. Dermot, the director, crushed it with
Oh,
the
he did a great
visuals
job.
as well as the choreography. And
Yeah.
may I just throw some more um, wonderful adjectives towards Kay. So this was another one of those moments where we were writing the song and we knew the Klingons had to come in. And of course, Klingon opera was a no-brainer. It was a bit on the nose. Um, and before we even started even thinking about that, I know the words Klingon opera happened. And then it was another one of those, wait, what if we do like a K-pop group with the Klingons? And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's either
I
gonna
think
fly
I
or it's not gonna
actually
fly.
I think I actually said, "Tom, I have an idea for here's what I think the Klingons should be." And I pulled up a video
A
by
video,
this
yeah.
K-pop band and I was like, "What if the Klingons are this?" And you were like, "Hold oh." And then like
We
and
pitched it
so
like the day after. She pitched it on a Zoom call.
and they loved it, but I have to tell you, it was not us like it came down to I don't know if they did shoot
They
um
shot both versions, yeah.
they shot both versions
Yeah.
and we were like
Kling-
they have to do they have to do they have to
Yeah.
do the Klingon
Yeah.
K-pop. I mean, how can you not do that? Anyway, they did, and I think they for taking that big swing, I think they were
Absolutely.
rewarded
You have
richly.
redefined the K in K-pop.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
people got it. It was like,
Yes.
oh my God, it
Yeah.
was just
And it speaks to the sort of audaciousness of the show. I mean, you've seen the show, their other episodes. They give 0 Fs. They do what they want to do, what their muse tells them to do, and they're very free. So the whole idea of a musical is audacious, and that speaks to the fact that the room didn't go silent when Kay pitched the K-pop thing. They were it was almost instant. It was just like one beat and it was like, yes, we're gonna do that. And we did it. We didn't even talk about the Klingon opera. We were just like, it was just going to be that. we did it, we delivered it, and then of course you go out to approvals. And of course, some folks were like, hey guys, we may have just gone a little far past where we need to go here. Why don't we have a little something, something in our back pocket as a just in case? And of course, that's going to be the Klingon opera. And so we wrote a little thing for that, very straightforward. It's baritone, Klingon opera in English, not in Klingon. And
Oh,
we
universal
shot it.
translator.
Yeah, correct. And it came out great.
It
And
did.
I'm pretty sure that's gonna, not pretty sure. I think that will be available like in a future, maybe a DVD release, or maybe they're gonna put
Needs
it
to be an
online. But
excerpt,
it
definitely.
it lives, it lives.
So that's
That was really
fantastic.
fun too,
Yeah.
like learning what the Klingons would say, like having the, you'll get your last breath at the end of Armaclesh. You're at the end of Armacleps. Your eternal torture is every Klingon's dream. It was just like to have these, like learning what the Klingons would say in this moment was like, it
Yeah.
was just it was so much fun, like being able to inhabit these characters that just go.
Yeah.
Well, this is an over-the-top moment in an over-the-top episode.
Yeah.
And my own thoughts are the Klingon opera would have fit. It would have been something you'd expect. But you have this whole plot point. They've got to do a big finale number, so they have so much singing and so much communicating in this way that it messes up the subspace whatever.
Yeah.
Full.
And
Old.
so you get to the spot. Really is the climax of the story. And I think if they had done the opera part, it probably would not have had the outright eye-opening, belly laughing kind of a moment that happened with the Klingon K-pop. And then you've got the Enterprise and the Klingon ships doing water ballet, which is hysterical.
Amazing.
Choreographed swimming, basically, is
Yeah.
the moment has just gone so over the top. So you go from the K-pop into that choreography, which was over the top as well.
Yeah.
And
Into the finale, crew coming up with the whole thing,
Oh my
you
gosh.
just went there. At that moment, we're like, okay, we're finally going to go there now. We're going to do the thing.
And again, with the show being willing to go places, they've done a crossover with the animated series,
Yeah.
which worked brilliantly. They've done a storybook series, and the original series, back in the 60s, had these kind of over the top things that they did as well. But this show has really embraced that, and doing the musical episode was a continuation and an extension of that, just kind of embracing how far can we go with this, and how many different things can we make this show be, and how can we do that really well as well.
Yes, and not forcing it. That's why the show is so great, and that's why the cast and the showrunners and the writers. I mean, it's audacious, all of it, and it's easy to do it poorly, and they do none of it poorly, and they do all of it with reverence and with care and with love to the canon. It's all there. They're just so into it, but what's important is they want to move it forward, right?
Yeah. And take big swings,
Take
like
big swings,
taking chances. And I feel like they're so, because like Tom said, it's so rooted in fidelity to canon, and they're so respectful of, and plus this is the prequel, so they're so respectful of what comes later, and making sure that they set up that they are true to where the story is going. And they're so smart. Oh my God, they're such good writers. Just the premise of this episode, that they go into a probability field while music is playing, and then all of a sudden, it's just like, it's brilliant because we believe it. It's like, oh, of course that would happen.
Yeah, so long as you can suspend disbelief for a musical, as a consumer.
And some people couldn't.
Correct.
Let's
And we
face
knew
it.
that,
We knew that.
but so long as you can do that, we're good,
We were prepared for a lot more hate coming our way. We were prepared to be
absolutely.
doxxed.
Well,
And
I feel like most of the reactions that I've seen, other than the people who were just like, well, I'm not even going to watch it.
yeah,
As soon as Spock started singing, I turned off the TV. Well, whatever. This was a real joy for people who are really enjoying this series. And I do feel like in your situation, you were brought in on very much on a situation where you have to extend the characters, you have to carry the plot, you
Yeah.
have to respect all of that stuff. And you mentioned it's a prequel. This is really happening during the time of the pilot of the original Star Trek show,
Mm.
when Spock is seen smiling and laughing and stuff like that. And they've written all of that in. They've written all of the characters in beautifully, but you have this tightrope to walk of making sure that you're going over the top the right amount, but then
Mhm.
still respecting everything that happened in the show. And I think you did a fantastic job with it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Arthur.
Well, let's go ahead and take one more break, and then we will come back and we will wrap up some more questions and just a couple issues and topics that I wanted to talk about to make sure that we cover those with the two of you.
Okay.
Sure.
Welcome back to the Melodology Podcast, celebrating the unsung excellence of melody makers. I am here with Kay Hanley and Tom Polce again, the songwriters from the Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode Subspace Rhapsody. And before we continue here, I wanted to bring it back. Kay earlier had talked about one of her proudest moments on this. Tom, what's one of your proudest moments on this project?
Well, moments. I think it would probably be when when we're getting playbacks back from some of the actors that didn't consider themselves singers, right? And seeing the reaction on their faces when they hear the finished track and they hear themselves in that sense of like you can tell they're into it and they're proud and they're also elated. That's like, wow, I've got this in me, right? Because every single one of them sang everything. And anytime that playback happened, I mean, even for some of the stellar singers, I can remember playing back Celia's song, "Keep Us Connected." We did the vocal. I went back, put it together, mixed it, then brought it back to the studio because she had to sing. She sings on many songs, and I played it for her, and just a smile, and it just made everything so worth it. So that I think I mentioned earlier. The Spock song, how that came together, and also another moment of having a vocalist who doesn't consider themselves a vocalist, a singer, to find out I got some pipes.
Yeah.
That was pretty great. So yeah, those are the things.
Well, then also, we talked earlier about some little surprises that happen in the story and some things that you don't expect. There are a lot of Easter eggs. There are a lot of hidden inside jokes in this. One being Una talking about in an alternate life
Yeah.
that she might sing Gilbert and Sullivan, which is a direct reference to your actress there, talking about what she does, which was a great little meta thing in there.
Yes.
What other little inside jokes or Easter eggs are there that you could talk about?
I mean, there's obviously the Buffy the Vampire Slayer stuff about bunnies, and
Yes.
there are references to that, which is smart because after the episode came out, there were a lot of favorable comparisons to the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode. Um,
I should mention though, to their credit, and also to my perhaps Kate knew it, but or to my just not having experience with that Buffy episode, they went right by me. Like when I was reading the script, I didn't realize
Me
those
too.
references, nor did they tell us
They
about those
didn't.
references. And it was smart. Maybe it would have pushed us to go a different direction, or
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what the process was, but we were not aware of it at the time. And it was just one of those lovely things. Like, that's oh my gosh, look at all that stuff. It was
Yeah.
a lovely sort of thing to find out after the fact.
Yeah, that could have made it derivative too. If they're like, oh,
Yeah.
we've got this joke that you've got to put in here
Yeah.
referencing this other show, or this reference that you have to squeeze in
Yeah.
from something completely different than the universe that you're in. They were put in a very nice and sly way. Oh, and
Agreed.
of course, the fact that her mentioning Gilbert and Sullivan, that entire number is a Gilbert and Sullivan
That
number.
was well,
Yes.
that was on purpose. That was 100% on purpose because we knew we wanted to have this was going to be a modern musical, but this gave us the opportunity to just hey,
Yeah.
to the more traditional. We did a beautiful little waltz there, and it was
It
nice
was
to
so
have an inclusion.
cute.
Yeah, an inclusion of that. And speaking of jokes, we were able to at least have some moments of levity. well, it was like Spock, for instance, on the during
Oh,
the
our
he's like,
prime directive, and he's like,
yeah, it's
not,
like,
not
not really,
exactly, because
that
we wanted
moment,
to get prime directive in there,
and it wasn't quite
and
working.
it's
Like, it's
not, and
not
you
really the prime
can't.
directive.
So
So
it
it's like,
was funny to put it in that place. Our prime directive, not
which is what a
exactly.
Trekkie would say while watching
Yeah,
it. So why not have Spock say
because
it? And we also get to
it's
keep our line that doesn't work that we like.
yeah,
It was like,
because
it's perfect.
we knew
Yes,
that prime
we knew.
directive we know
Absolutely.
what prime directive is, by the way,
That's
and
right.
so
We just like the way it
we
sounded. Yes.
and so
And
it
he
was
also,
so funny to have Spock say not exactly, because
yeah. He's also got that moment in the same song where it's like, "We'll miss singing," and Spock is just like,
he's
"I
like,
won't
I
miss
won't miss
singing." He's like,
singing.
just another mwah of Spock. It was just perfect.
Yeah, Spock ended up having quite a few of the
Yeah,
comedic
yeah, for
moments, which is
sure.
very straight. Yeah,
Yes.
Well, it's you get to have him. He has comedic moments because he gets to be the foil. He can
Yes.
say things and be the straight man
the
Yes.
that
straight man.
makes the
Yeah,
things funny in the
yeah.
jokes.
Yes. For sure. Shout out Ethan.
On the topic of the songwriting, being a songwriter, the amazing craft that you've applied to this is because you have experience, you have done this work, and you've been in the industry a long time. What would you tell people who are either just starting or are interested in creating music and creating songs themselves?
Shall I? I'll jump in there on
Go
this
for
one.
it.
Well, if you are creating music as an artist, as an entity that's writing their own music to perform, that is uh, that is the kind of thing where I think all of us should have some sort of creative outlet that allows us to express and also expel that which is either working for us or not working for us emotionally, right? It's just a healthy thing to do. And that could be anything. It could be poetry, it could be music, it could be visual art, dancing, whatever. We should all be doing it. I think it's a healthy thing. If it's something you want to be doing as for a living, uh, then I guess my real advice to someone who's trying to decide whether or not that is the path they want to pursue, I'll just share a piece of just cold, hard truth that an old teacher gave to me. This teacher said to me at like 14 or 15, he's like, Tom, if your, how did he say? Yeah, he said, if your constitution will allow you to not pursue being a musician, for a full-time job, don't be a musician as a full-time job. It's too hard, right? The people that continue to do this and that potentially have success are the ones that have no choice. So you need to go home and you need to have a come to J moment, come to Jesus moment with yourself and just ask yourself, can you be a happy human being not pursuing this as your main pursuit? And if the answer is no, I will not be happy, then you must do it. And then if you decide to do it, it's got to be 150 bazillion percent because there's a million others that want to do it. Half of them are going to drop out before they're 30, and you'll be left with the lifers, and you need to be a lifer, right?
Hmm.
And if not, continue being an artist, but be it for yourself and do it for all of the more important reasons to be an artist, in my opinion, right? It's just my opinion. It is a healthy pursuit. It is a pursuit that, like I said, it expels, that which is in you. So instead of expelling it in a violent way or expelling it in an angry way, or even if it's just to acknowledge gratitude in your life, do it through art. That's just a healthy endeavor, which we should all be doing. So that's my
And
spiel.
I love what Tom said, and I will add some more practical advice, which is if you decide to be a songwriter, whether it or a producer who's a songwriter, a singer who's a songwriter who wants to write for other people or to picture like Tom and I do now, join a PRO, join ASCAP or BMI so that you can collect your performance royalties. So if your song gets played on the radio, if it gets played on a streaming platform, you will get paid for that. So do that that is kindergarten. That's
Yes.
songwriter 101 business, music business 101, join a PRO, and then register your songs as you write them. And you may not see, I mean, I didn't make money. I don't know about you, Tom, but I didn't start getting checks from ASCAP until, a few years after I joined. But
Yep.
at some point, you might. So there's
Yep.
that. And then I think if Tom and I are any kind of example, it's like, find your people. Like Tom and I have been doing this together, and he and I have about 30 people that we still play with back in Boston and here in LA. But we've known each other since we were
Babies, since we were
24
kids. Yeah.
24 years. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been like, and Tom is out there like playing with people, and so I think what I'm trying to say is like, learn how to play well in the sandbox with others. Learn how to collaborate. Because even if I cannot tell you how many times it happens that like someone that I met 15 years ago. Anyway, just share generously of your contacts, of your networking, and it will all come back to you. And also find your people and
Great
collaborate with
advice.
them.
And show up for them. Showing up is
Yes.
half the deal. Just show up.
Don't blow
for
off your
people.
sessions. Don't be late.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick.
Go see your friends play when they play.
Yes.
Go
Yep.
and support. Show up.
Yep.
Gotta show
And
up.
like, if someone sends you a song to listen to it and give them some free. I know you don't want to. I don't want to either. I don't want to
Yeah.
listen to my friends' songs when they
Yeah.
the worst. But you know what? Someone takes the time to like write and record something and send it to you. It's like, just respond to the email, for God's sake. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's it. What were you
That
gonna
does
say,
bring us
Arthur?
back. Responding and also having your people brings us back to the very beginning, where Tom reached out to you about this amazing opportunity to write the music for this episode.
Yeah.
So it is a nice kind of a wrapping up. Anything else that you would like to say about writing the music, about the process for this thing, about the experience of Subspace Rhapsody?
Well, while Kay's thinking, I'm just going to say it was a particular joy. It was, of course, it was a lot of hard work, but it wasn't, it all just sort of flowed. And back to Kay's sandbox analogy, like when you're in a sandbox with a bunch of simpatico, creative
Mm-hmm.
people, it is just such a joy. And it made the work just worth it and not a chore. And it was just a joy. This one was a real joy.
Mm. And I agree with that. It's also the hardest the hardest gig I've ever had, the most challenging gig I've ever had as a songwriter. And, I've been doing this for a long time. So and it was so, I'm so proud of us that we, like, I don't know who would have taken this task more seriously than we did. And I mean, other people would have probably, but like, I don't know. We felt a huge responsibility to the
Yes.
characters and to the story. And we did not dial every word, every note, everything
Mm.
was chosen with care and with, as I've said many times over the course of this interview, with fidelity to canon. And it's just such an honor to have written the first ever Star Trek musical. Like, it's
Yay.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Thank you very, very much for taking the time to be here today. I really appreciate it. This has been very exciting for me as a fan of both music and Star Trek. I feel like you did a great success. You hit it out of the park with this, and I look forward to seeing the recognition that this work gets, because it comes down to the theme of the podcast, celebrating the unsung excellence of melody makers, and you two are excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arthur.
Thanks for having us.
This has been the Melodology Podcast, celebrating the unsung excellence of melody makers. We look forward to having you at our next episode.